So today's story is about OP who loses her father. But what she was not expecting after that was absolute betrayal from her mother, and I'm telling you, hysterically losing her mind. I'm 18, I'm female, and I'm stuck in the middle of a horrible situation, and I really don't know what to do or even who to believe anymore, to be honest. I feel as though the whole world that I knew is gone, and it's in a place it's just a mess that's made up of liars and ruined lives. Yeah, I know this sounds like some angsty teenager writing about a breakup with a boy or problems with a school teacher, but believe me, this is a lot worse than any of that. I wish so much that the only problem that I have in my life right now would be some stupid boy who had just broken my heart. That would be a lot easier to deal with than this gigantic mess. Honestly, I'm not sure what to do, who to believe, or how I'm going to carry on with my life after finding out what I know now. There's so much I need to get off my chest right now, and I've seen so many people tell their stories to strangers, and this is the only way I can clear my mind right now. It's like a screaming out in the void, and I don't know or care if anyone reads this or not. I just don't want it in my head anymore. I always thought I was lucky. I grew up in a stable family with my mom Donna and my dad Liam, and I don't have any siblings, but that never really bothered me, as I come from an Irish family, and so I have a lot of cousins and family members around my age. We're also very Catholic, and I have friends and I've met through school and through church and other groups like a good Catholic girl. I attend Mass and go to confession. This is important, so bear with me these details. My dad's best friend is the priest at our church, and he's also my uncle/godfather who I adore. To everyone at church, he is Fr. Patrick, but to me he's Uncle Patty, who brings me sweets and helps me with my homework. My dad and Patrick grew up living close to each other, and we were best friends from the stories that my dad would tell me. It's hard to believe that Patrick ever became a priest as growing up. He had an eye for the girls, and would get into mischief with my father, however. He felt the call to ministry, and he became a priest when he left school. I don't know what you guys know about being Catholic, but this meant he could not marry or have a family, and so he treats me like his favorite niece. My parents are practicing Catholics, and as is my whole family, and to me, it's just a normal part of life. I have friends both in the church and from non-church families, and no one really cares what we all believe, so I was a happy child. Everything was great until 2 years ago, when I was 16 years old. I came home from school to find my mom sobbing in the living room, and, well, Patrick was sitting next to her holding her hand. My grandparents were all there, and I could tell the moment that I walked into the room that something terribly happened. As the only person missing was my dad, I knew it had to do with him. My dad works in construction with my grandpa, and yeah, it can be a dangerous job, so I just automatically assumed that he's been in an accident. I stood in the doorway really confused, waiting for someone to tell me what was going on. When Patrick came over and held my hand, he told me that my father was in the hospital and was in a bad condition. At this point, he did not tell me what had happened, as my mom was wailing and pulling at her hair, and so everyone was focused on dealing with her. When my grandma had taken my mom upstairs to her bedroom, my grandpa and Patrick sat me down and explained to me that my dad had tried to take his own life, and that although he was still alive, he was on life support machines, and the doctors did not think he would ever wake up. Well, they were correct. My dad died that night. It was horrifying, confusing, and sad times as I tried to work out what he had done this for. My dad was the happiest man I knew. He always had jokes to tell and a smile on his face. I couldn't work out why a man who was so full of life would do something like this. Also, my dad was a devoted Catholic, and although times are changed and the rules have relaxed slightly, to us, taking your own life is a sin against God and the life that he gave us. My dad had told me that so many times over the years, and now he had done the very thing that he told me God did not forgive us for. I won't go into details about what he did because that could be traumatic for others, but he did not choose an easy way to die, which is why he was in the hospital for a little bit. My mom's behavior in the following few days was strange when I look back at it, but people do strange things when they're grieving. She would wail and hit herself, so that my grandma, who was staying with us, had to constantly be at her side. My mom screamed some awful things about my dad leaving her, always her, never me, and which was the worst thing for me, spent hours just yelling over and over that he would not be able to have a respectable funeral and he had shamed her by taking his own life. Now, when I look back, I see that she's made my dad's death all about her. At no point did she ask what had caused my dad to feel this way, the only option for him, or whether I was dealing with it at all. Thankfully, my grandparents, Patrick, and my best friends were there for me to help me get my head around everything. It was my grandma's suggestion that I go and stay with Patrick just for a few days, as she was worried that my mom's grief and behavior would make my own grief worse. I should say that this was my dad's mom, and she was always closer to me than my grandma on my mom's side, who, I am sorry to say this, is a hateful old shrew. She never liked my father and did not think he was good enough for her daughter, and used to take great delight if I ever did anything wrong, saying to anyone who would listen that it was no surprise I was bad, as I was my father's daughter through and through. Well, I stayed with Patrick from the day after my dad died until just before the funeral. Although my grandma and grandpa came around to see me every day, between them, they helped me to understand that although my dad did do what he did, he would be forgiven and could still be buried in the church. Modern Catholics, well, they're a bit more tolerant of people who do what my father did, but older ones still see it as a mortal sin. I did not go to school in the week after my dad's death, and the funeral, as I do not think I would deal with the questions and the rumors, and my teachers sent all my work home anyways. I was doing my exams later that year, so I didn't have to fall behind. The funeral passed in a blur. I don't know how much you know about the Catholic Church, but we are big on ceremonies, and now when I smell incense and see the black-robed priest, I'm taken back to the day that I watched my dad's coffin being lowered into the wet ground. It poured down with rain that day, and I have a clear memory of Patrick and his cassock, standing by the grave reading the prayers in committal as the cold rain rained down on his face and beard. It was as though the sky was crying with us. I always did see life as a series of images. Life went on as it does when you lose someone that you love so dearly. I carried on at school, and this year I did my final exams, ready to go off to university. I just wish my father could have seen. I was not sure what I wanted to do with my life for quite a long time. But one night when I was sitting by the fire at Patrick's house, he said that my father had always said that he thought I would work in a job where I cared for other people, as I had a beautiful soul. My dad had always had a way with words, I swear, and I decided I was going into the nursing and maybe specialize in helping people with mental health issues. My mom could not care less about what I did. In the last 2 years, we've grown apart, and I've been spending more and more time with my dad's parents and Patrick. At first, she was so caught up in her grief that she did not have time for anything other than that unless it was for people showing up to tell her how well she was coping, or how she was such a beautiful widow. She wore black for a long time, but not in a traditional way. More in a going out to a nightclub kind of way. I'm talking short dresses, high heels. My mom, yeah, she is a beautiful woman. She looks amazing for her age. But she really went all out on looking like, well, I'm sorry I'm spiteful at times, but a black widow. I was accepted into a nursing school at the other end of the country, and I was reluctant at first to travel so far away from my family, but my grandparents told me that it was only for a few years, and if I missed home too much, I could have come home for the holidays, and when I qualified, applying for a hospital close to home. So, I packed up my stuff, and last week my grandparents dropped me off at student accommodation. I've only been here for 3 weeks, and I absolutely love it. I've made new friends and discovered new coffee shops, and I think I'll enjoy my time here. Here, no one knows my past or laughs about my mother, who got herself a new boyfriend not so long ago. He's a lot younger, well, I expected that, than she is, and let me tell you, he's annoying as hell. Anyways, that's my background, and now I will get to the point of the post. The first part of my unloading. Last night, I got a phone call from my grandma, saying that I needed to come home as soon as I possibly could, as things have happened that I needed to be with the family before I got out to the general public. I was confused and worried, as it would need to be something serious for them to ask me to get permission to take a break from my courses. I said I was in the middle of my induction, but my grandma said that had to wait. I was trying to find a way to stay here when he said, "Well, you need to get your bag ready. Your grandpa will be there for you in an hour to get you. Your mom's been arrested and Patrick is in serious trouble. Come on home, girl." And that's when my world collapsed for the second time in my 18 years on this earth. I got back to my grandma's house just after 1 a.m. this morning, and I'm still trying to process what exactly is going on. Everyone's in shock, and I can't think straight. Once I get straight of my own head, I will update this. Right now, if I try to carry this on, it'll be a mess of incoherent babbling. I need to sleep, but I don't think that's going to come easy tonight. Update number 1. Well, hey guys, after a restless night where I don't think I got more than an hour's sleep, I'm up and trying to make sense of this nightmare. I'm not 100% sure about all the facts right now, but what I do know is that things have, well, gone insane. So I'll try to write down what I know so far, and I'm sure that as things progress, it'll get a bit more clear. But right now, I feel like I'm living in a crime novel. After my dad died, my mom's relationship with Patrick was just never the same. He was still her priest, and she still went to church, as always, because she was strong in her beliefs that she had to listen to scripture, take communion, and go regularly to confession. The church where we went is, well, big. It's actually a cathedral, and so a lot of the time my mom and Patrick did not even have to cross paths. And although they were civil to each other, that was about it. I learned last night that Patrick had thought that my mom was being disrespectful to my dad's memory by acting the way that she's been acting. He understood the initial grief period because we all felt it. But it was the way that she made it all about her. There were things I did not know, and I think I'm still only starting to hear the very top layer of how bad things were, before and after my dad died. My mom tried to stop a lot of things from happening after Dad passed. She didn't want to go to full church services, as she was embarrassed about how he died. She was heard by Patrick saying to her friend that she was wishing that her dad had got cancer or something respectable so she would not have to be ashamed of having a weak husband. I was absolutely horrified. That was my dad she was talking about. So I tried to reason with myself that it was just grief-stricken, but it still hurt. Anyways, as I said, my mom and Patrick were not really on talking terms anymore. And my dad's parents had also cut off my mom as much as possible. They only dealt with her when it was time for anything to do with me. I'm such an idiot because in the last 2 years I never really acknowledged how much my grandparents did for me. Or how much Patrick did for me either. And how little my mom did. She had no endpoint to my university application, did not help with funding, did not help me pack, and did not come to help me settle into my new home. To be honest, since I've left, I've only spoken to her a few times, and that was only when she was telling me about how bad her life was. Was she always like this and I just didn't see it? I'm not sure anymore. My dad's parents have always been so careful not to say bad things about her in my presence, but that changed last night, and I heard my grandma swear for the first time ever. She did immediately say sorry and grabbed her rosary, but I knew she was angry. In other circumstances, it would have been funny. Okay, I would have been avoiding the main thing because I feel like once I write it down, then it becomes real, and once I acknowledge that it's real, I have to face what'll be coming next. I will have to pick a side, and I'll have to face the fact that someone has lied to me for the last 2 years. These are the facts as I know them at this time, and darn, I sound like a lawyer in court. My mom's been going to church, as I said, but has been timing her confessions for when other priests are on duty, rather than Patrick. Not that it should matter, as priests are tied to their vows, where they're not allowed to tell anyone anything that you tell them. It's considered a mortal sin for a priest to break their vows, and even if they are forced to reveal things, they can still be punished by the church. For a priest to willingly break their vows is practically unheard of. But that is what Patrick has done. I only have the basics, but I have an interview with the police this afternoon, so I think I will know more later on. All I can do now is write what I know. I don't want to speculate, as that leads to chaos and more chaos. My mom went to confession last week, as she always does, and did not see who was the priest inside the box. It's not always shown, and she did not wait for the priest to speak before she began to confess, and by the time Patrick spoke, it was too late for her, as she had already done her confession. The thing is that it should not matter, because telling your priest a secret is the safest way to tell one, as they can't tell anybody. I can go into more details later, but in that confession, my mom told Patrick that my dad, well, he killed himself. But she had been the one that drove him to it, provided the means to do it, and when he changed his mind, bullied him into carrying on to the point that she physically helped him. My mother, she was responsible for this. She had every chance to phone for help, to get the ambulance when she changed his mind, but she did not. Instead, she finished the job. To make matters worse, once she realized what she's done and confessed to Patrick, she taunted him in the confessional and laughed about how he would always know how his friend had died, and there was nothing he could do about it without being excommunicated and risking his soul. She was right. That's what Patrick would face if he told. He would be kicked from the church and never welcomed again. And by our beliefs, he would not have done something from which there are no forgiveness unless the Pope decided to be nice. That rarely happens. However, Patrick loved my father. He was like a brother to him, and my mom had just told him she basically killed him, and Patrick could not live with that. I don't know whether he went higher in the church first, but later on, that same night that she gave her confession, he went to the police. The story sounded so unreal, but I think the fact that an actual priest was sitting in front of them telling them that his friend's wife had not only refused to help him when he had tried to hurt himself, but then finished the job, was something they did not think he would make up. Everything moved very quickly after that, and I'm not sure what's happening. I'm speaking to the police later, but I don't know what I can tell them. I'm not allowed to speak to my mom or Patrick, and I'm not even sure where Patrick is. He was recalled to church to face what he's done. It's all such a mess, and I feel overwhelmed and just want to go to sleep and wake up when this whole nightmare is ended. Update number 2. I wish I could say I felt better, but I don't. I'm just more confused than ever. I had an interview with the police yesterday, and I was so weirded out as the mom and dad they were talking about was nothing like the mom and dad I knew. They made my dad out to be a bullied husband, and my mom to be an evil bully. I don't remember any signs of that, and all I could tell them was that I remembered my childhood was a happy one. My grandma was in the interview with me, and she smiled sadly and said to the police, that's because we kept her away from all that. Suddenly, all the times I was suddenly asked to stay with my grandparents or Patrick's because they wanted my company sprang into my mind. At times, it would be a last-minute thing, and my grandma and Patrick would pick me up from school. I'd ask them why, and they'd say, just because? I never questioned it. It now appears these were the times that my dad was not feeling great, and they did not want me to see him at his worst. The fact that my mom was responsible for a lot of his mental problems had come to light after the confession to Patrick. I will never know what caused my mother to gloat so much once she realized that she just confessed what she did to my dad's best friend. Maybe she was actually so confident that he would not be able to do anything, that she thought she could just unburden herself on everything and rub it in the face that she was the one who cost my father his life. Well, after my mom was arrested, the police searched the house and found my mom's journals. She had always been a person to keep notes to herself in journals, and I have memories of her sitting up for hours just writing away. I just thought that she was creative. I do remember that I once asked her what she was writing about, and she slammed the journal shut and told me it was nothing to do with me. Well, after that, I never asked again. After all, people's diaries are a private thing. Until now, my mom's were in the hands of the police, and from what little that we've been told, they paint a picture of a woman who was cruel, cold. They always are talking about getting a psychologist to look into my mom, as they think she has some kind of sociopathic tendencies. It's like they're talking about a stranger, I swear, and not my mother. As I said, there was not much I could add to the investigation as I was far too young and protected. I told my grandma after the police left that they had to stop protecting me now and tell me everything. I wanted to know what happened to my dad. I know I was just a child, but there was a rising feeling of guilt that I could have done something to help him, and maybe he'd still be here with me. As it stood, I was looking at losing my mom as well. All I wanted was to talk to her and find out what happened. If I'm honest, well, I just wanted to face my mother and hear her tell me it was all a misunderstanding and that they have got it wrong. I wanted to hear it, and I wanted it to be true more than anything I've ever wanted. I did not want to live with the fact that my mom possibly hurt my father. I'm in such a mess right now. My grandparents have been amazing and helped me sort out everything I needed to. I decided that I would not be going back to university until everything was at least a bit more clear, as I would not be able to concentrate, and I did not think I would make good grades at nursing school whilst I was distracted like this. My tutors were amazing. They said that they would be there for anything I needed, and that I should not give up my career completely. They talked to the university administration, and it was agreed that I could postpone my entire university year until the next university year. They would hold my place for me, and I would just go back next year like nothing happened. I'd only just started, so it was not too bad, and all my friends would be a year ahead, but they would still be there for me. They have also been amazing and said they'll stay in touch. One of my friends has agreed to empty my room and store my things until I can get them back. I don't really know what else to say. My mom's been arrested for murder, and my dad's best friend went against the actual church and in his eyes God himself to try to get justice. What a friend. What a mess. I don't know what'll happen, and I suppose before long you'll be able to read about it in the newspapers perhaps, so you won't need an update. It'll also give away who I am, but not much I can do about that, right? For now, all I can do is wait, and let's see what happens. Update number 3, final update of the story. Wow, I totally forgot about this. It's been a long time since I've updated, I know. I almost forgot about it completely until I was messing around on my laptop and found some forums I had to resend to the university. Funny how trauma makes you forget things that seem so important at the time. Well, I guess by now, anyone who was nosy and worked out who we were will have seen the news of what happened, but I guess since I'm here, I'll give you the actual story, as I read some things in a newspaper that made me laugh about how ridiculous they were. I swear, they say anything. I'd heard from others how, quote, the trash media had no respect for people or their lives if they can make things up to get a good story. But until this happened, I thought they were maybe just exaggerating. Okay, so here we go. An inside track of my life, as told by someone who actually lived through it and is not just trying to sell a newspaper. Well, my mother was formally charged with manslaughter, which was a disappointment when it all came out because she knew exactly what she did, and I do not think it was an accident. I know you should not want your mom to be charged with murder, but my dad did not deserve what happened. Well, in court, her diaries were made public. The papers loved it. For years, she had kept detailed notes of how she had tormented my father, exploited his depression, and laughed about how pathetic of a man she married. She described me as a nuisance, and any love I still had for my mother departed when it was read out in court that following my dad's death, she had questioned whether she would get rid of me too as well. Well, in a more permanent way. The trial was hard for us all. Patrick came and had to justify breaking his vows and could see on his face the pain he was in. It broke my heart every time I heard him talk. He had to tell the courts all about the price he paid. He was excommunicated and thrown from the church. I saw my mother laugh in court when he said that. Then they got the psychologist on the stand, and he laid out a picture of a woman who was seriously ill and was a danger to anyone around her who she thought was in her way. She was a danger to society. I think her boyfriend at the time had a lucky escape. I guess I did too. So I sat and listened, and by the end of the long trial, I had no feelings left for my mother. She was like a stranger to me. She actually went on the stand against her lawyer's recommendation. I found out later, and she was absolutely deranged. I didn't even recognize her. My grandpa whispered to me that she was playing on her problems for sympathy from the jury, and it did not work. She just looked more and more dangerous, and I think the jury was actually scared of her. I have to admit, I was terrified she would get off, as I would not feel safe ever again. But she did not. The jury saw through her, and with a little bit of evidence that the prosecution had in the form of letters and diaries that my dad had written to me, and put away in case anything like this ever happened, she was found guilty. The letters, my heart and I was devastated that the first time I heard them read out was in a full court surrounded by journalists, police, nosy spectators. My heart was so broken I wasn't even sure it'd ever feel whole again. My mother was found guilty. And the judge talked at the end about how he had felt during the trial. He spoke about how much my dad had suffered, and how as a family we've been deprived of years that we could have spent with him. He told Patrick that he had been extremely brave and selfless, and the judge said he knew what this had cost Patrick. After he had given his evidence, Patrick sat next to me holding my hand every day of the trial, and as a family we never missed a day. I wanted to see justice for Dad. My mom had to try to make us uncomfortable many times, but I was there no matter what, looking right in her eyes. It's all over now. But the memories and the knowledge of what my poor dad went through will never leave my mind. I went to his grave after it was over, and I told him he had justice. I told him I loved him. My mom's going to be in prison for a very, very long time. She's in a psychiatric secure hospital until she proves that she's, quote, sane. And then she'll go to a normal prison. My grandpa thinks she'll play it on and stay in that prison for a long time, so hey, that's it. That's my story. It sucks, but sometimes life's like that. Thanks for listening. Alright guys, so let me know your honest opinions on this story. This was an absolute wild ride. Imagine you were in OP's position and what you found out from Patrick and all those things that you had to witness and hear in front of everybody at the trial. I would simply just not be able to handle it. Go ahead and give some advice to OP if you were in the position she was, and drop down in the comment sections what you would do differently. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on today's video. This one was definitely a crazy one. If you want to see more videos like this, consider subscribing. And if you want even more videos, check out the description below for all the channels that I have. Have an amazing day, and I will see you guys in the next one.